The Call Center Haunting Chapter 1, The Midnight Shift. Emma sighed as she logged into her computer at Spectrum Solutions, a 24/7 call center tucked into the basement of a nondescript office building. It was just past midnight, and she was already regretting signing up for the night shift. The pay was decent, but the hours dragged, and the silence of the nearly empty building made her skin crawl. The call center was huge arrows and rows of cubicles lit by harsh fluorescent lights that buzzed faintly. Only 3 other people worked the graveyard shift: Kyle, the sarcastic IT guy; Janice, the overly chatty team lead; and Lewis, the quiet night manager who mostly kept to himself. Emma's station was near the far corner of the floor, where the lights flickered sporadically and the air vents made odd noises. She plugged in her headset and waited for the first call to come through. The faint hum of computers and the occasional shuffle of paper were the only sounds. It didn't take long for the unease to settle in. The space felt wrong, as if the air was heavier here. But Emma brushed it off. She was just tired, she told herself. The night would pass like any other. Chapter 2. The disconnected caller at 1:13 a.m. Emma's phone rang. She straightened up, grateful for the distraction, and hit the answer button. "Thank you for calling Spectrum Solutions. This is Emma. How can I assist you tonight?" she said, her tone professional. There was no response. Only silence. "Hello?" Emma repeated, frowning. She checked the call logno number was displayed, just a string of zeros. Static crackled faintly on the other end, followed by a sound that made her heart skip a beat, a faint, raspy breathing. "Is anyone there?" Emma asked, her voice trembling slightly. A whisper came through, so faint she almost missed it. It sounded like a single word: help. Emma's stomach knotted. "I'm sorry, I didn't catch that. Can you repeat yourself?" The line went dead. Emma stared at the phone for a moment, her hands clammy. It wasn't uncommon to get prank calls, but something about this one felt different. The whisper had sounded desperate, almost afraid. She shrugged it off and tried to focus on the next call, but the unease lingered. Chapter 3. The empty desk by 2 a.m. The office had grown quieter. Kyle was off somewhere tinkering with the servers, and Janice had disappeared for her 5th coffee break. Lewis was nowhere to be seen, though that wasn't unusual. He often retreated to his office for hours at a time. Emma stretched and stood up to get a cup of water from the break room. As she walked past the rows of cubicles, she noticed something strange. One of the desks near the center of the floor was fully set up, computer on, headset neatly placed, a steaming cup of coffee beside the keyboard. She stopped. That station was supposed to be empty. Only 4 people were working tonight, and no one sat there. "Lewis? Janice?" she called out, but her voice only echoed faintly in the cavernous space. The computer screen suddenly flickered, and Emma froze. A faint image appeared on the monitor, grainy and distorted, but unmistakable. It was a face, pale, hollow-eyed, and staring directly at her. Emma gasped and stumbled back, nearly knocking over a chair. When she looked again, the screen was blank. Chapter 4. The Whispering Floor. Emma returned to her desk, her nerves frayed. She didn't want to tell the others what she'd seen. It sounded crazy, even to her. But the unease was growing, gnawing at her like an itch she couldn't scratch. The phone rang again, startling her. She hesitated before answering. "Thank you for calling Spectrum Solutions. This is Emma," she said, her voice shakier than before. This time, there was no static, no breathing. Instead, a voice as soft, almost a whisper came through. "You shouldn't be here." Emma's blood ran cold. "Who is this?" The line went dead again. She pulled off her headset and leaned back in her chair, her heart pounding. Something wasn't right. The calls, the empty desk, the face on the monitor, it all felt connected, but she couldn't make sense of it. Then she heard it, faint whispers, like a dozen voices murmuring just out of earshot. They seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere all at once, growing louder and more insistent. Emma spun around, but the floor was empty. The whispers stopped abruptly, leaving only silence. Chapter 5. The Locked Room. Emma decided to find Louis. He needed to know what was happening, and she wasn't about to face this alone. She made her way to his office, but the door was locked. "Louis?" she called, knocking loudly. There was no response. She pressed her ear to the door and thought she heard faint shuffling inside, followed by a soft, rhythmic tapping. "Louis? Are you in there?" she asked again, her voice shaking. The tapping stopped. Then, from the other side of the door, a voice low and guttural whispered, "You can't leave." Emma stumbled back, her heart racing. She turned and ran back to her desk, her footsteps echoing loudly in the empty space. Chapter 6. The lights at 3:33 a.m. The overhead lights began to flicker violently. Emma clutched the edge of her desk, her breath coming in short gasps. The whispers were back, louder now, overlapping and echoing until they were almost deafening. The lights went out completely, plunging the floor into darkness. Emma grabbed her phone and turned on the flashlight, the small beam cutting through the blackness. That's when she saw them. Figures, dozens of them standing between the cubicles, their outlines barely visible in the faint light. They didn't move, didn't speak, just stood there, watching her. Emma backed away, her flashlight trembling in her hand. "Stay away!" she screamed, but her voice only echoed uselessly. One of the figures stepped forward, its face coming into view. It was the same face she'd seen on the monitor, pale, hollow, and impossibly gaunt. It opened its mouth, and a single, chilling word escaped. "Run." Chapter 7. The Escape. Emma didn't need to be told twice. She bolted for the elevator, her flashlight swinging wildly as she ran. The whispers grew louder, more frantic, as if the figures were chasing her. She reached the elevator and slammed the button, praying it would arrive quickly. The lights above the doors flickered erratically, but the elevator didn't move. The figures were closing in now, their forms growing clearer with each passing second. Emma turned and ran for the stairwell, yanking the door open and sprinting down the steps 2 at a time. She burst out into the cold night air and didn't stop running until she was several blocks away. Epilogue: Emma quit the call center the next day, refusing to explain her sudden decision. She heard rumors that the night shift was being shut down due to maintenance issues, but she knew the truth. The haunting whispers still echoed in her mind, and every now and then, when she was alone at night, she swore she could see shadowy figures watching her from the corners of her vision. She never worked another night shift again.